The Pentagon's new sign reads, Department of War. This change is not merely cosmetic, it represents a profound shift in national policy and identity. This is not just a rebranding, it's a declaration. A bold statement that the United States is ready to embrace its role on the global stage with renewed vigor and clarity. The United States now openly embraces its role as a global warrior, abandoning the language of defense and restraint. This marks a significant departure from the past, where diplomacy and defense were the watchwords. For decades, military actions were justified as defensive, a shield for freedom. The narrative was one of protection, of safeguarding liberty against external threats. Now, the sword is unsheathed for all to see. The military's mission is clear and unambiguous, with a focus on proactive engagement rather than reactive defense. The return to the original name is a deliberate act, signaling that the post-World War II era of collective security was a detour. It suggests a return to a more straightforward, albeit aggressive, approach to international relations. The true state of the nation, this change says, is war. Language shapes reality. And by altering the language, the government is reshaping the nation's identity and purpose. When the military is called the Department of Defense, every action must be justified as protection. This often led to convoluted justifications and complex narratives to support military actions. By renaming it the Department of War, the government removes that hurdle. The need for justification is diminished, allowing for a more direct approach to military engagement. Its purpose is now explicit: to wage war, no longer needing justification. This clarity of purpose is both empowering and daunting, as it sets a clear path forward. This shift is the result of years of endless conflict and the normalization of permanent military engagement. The nation has grown accustomed to a state of perpetual war, where peace seems elusive. The language of defense grew hollow as wars dragged on. The public became weary of the constant state of conflict, and the old narratives no longer held sway. Instead of questioning the wars, leaders changed the language to match reality. This linguistic shift reflects a deeper acceptance of war as a permanent fixture in national policy. The Department of War is an honest label for a nation that can no longer imagine peace. It acknowledges the reality of a world where conflict is constant and peace is a distant ideal. It is the final surrender to the seductive force of militarism. The nation has embraced its military might as a defining characteristic, shaping its identity and future. The question is no longer if the nation should go to war, but where and when. This new reality demands constant vigilance and readiness to engage at a moment's notice. The era of defensive posturing is over. The nation stands ready to assert its power and influence, embracing a future defined by its military prowess. At the center of this dramatic transformation in American military policy stands Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, a figure whose presence signals a new era for the Department of War. Hegseth's rise to this powerful position has been marked by controversy, charisma, and a relentless drive to reshape the nation's approach to conflict. A former Fox News host and a decorated veteran of both Iraq and Afghanistan, Hegseth brings a unique blend of media savvy and battlefield experience. He openly rejects the traditional tools of diplomacy, favoring instead the uncompromising language of total war. For Hegseth, negotiation is weakness, only decisive action matters. His vision for the military is not about managing endless conflicts or seeking stalemates. Instead, he believes in overwhelming victory, swift, absolute, and undeniable. Every operation, every deployment is aimed at crushing opposition and leaving no doubt about America's dominance. In Hegseth's worldview, the military is the ultimate instrument of national will. Its core purpose is to destroy America's enemies, not to police the world or build nations. He sees restraint as a relic of a bygone era, a dangerous hesitation that only emboldens adversaries. In his first public addresses as secretary, Hegseth condemned the post-Vietnam era's caution, calling it a grave mistake. He described modern rules of engagement as shackles that put American lives at risk and undermine victory. His directive to the armed forces is clear: win at any cost. The methods used are secondary to the outcome. For Hegseth, the end always justifies the means. In his rhetoric, diplomacy is little more than appeasement, and compromise is equated with surrender. He has little patience for negotiations or half measures. Hegseth channels the deep frustration of soldiers who, for years, felt their hands were tied by politicians and bureaucrats far from the front lines. He promises to give them the freedom to fight and win without hesitation. He offers a vision of moral clarity, a battle between good and evil, with America destined to deliver the final, decisive blow. This message has electrified his supporters and unsettled his critics. Now, Hegseth is reviewing military codes and international treaties, seeking ways to unleash the full power of the warfighter. He is determined to remove any legal or bureaucratic obstacles that might stand in the way of victory. The Geneva Conventions and long-standing war crimes constraints are now under direct assault. Critics warn that this could have grave consequences for America's global standing and the rules of war. In Hegseth's Department of War, the only true crime is losing. Victory is the only measure that matters, and everything else is just a distraction. President Trump fully endorses this new doctrine. The Department of War fulfills his promise of strength and order, making the military an extension of his will. Trump has threatened to use the military against domestic dissent, blurring the line between policing and war. The Posse Comitatus Act is now seen as an obstacle, not a safeguard. Protests labeled as insurrections justify military deployment in American cities. The sight of soldiers on U.S. streets is becoming reality. The tools of counterinsurgency are now used at home. The empire always comes home. The new doctrine is simple: victory at any cost. Proportional response and escalation control are discarded as relics. The new approach is maximum aggression and dominance, not deterrence. Every conflict is an existential struggle to be won decisively. Civilian casualties and infrastructure are now acceptable targets. The strategy is annihilation, not surgical strikes. Massive investments in offensive weapons and first strike capability fuel a global arms race. Adversaries see this as a direct threat, not a deterrent. The taboo against nuclear weapons is eroding. Tactical nukes are reframed as usable. The threshold for nuclear war is lowered. The pursuit of victory at any cost risks the unthinkable. The engine behind this militarism is fervent Christian nationalism. Leaders like Hegseth see America's struggles as theological battles, America as God's chosen nation. Enemies are cast as forces of evil, justifying aggression as a holy cause. War's horrors are excused as necessary for a divine mission. This mindset rejects international law for religious certainty. Soldiers are taught to see themselves as holy warriors. The goal: secure the next American century through dominance, not coexistence. It's a blueprint for endless conflict, mistaking military power for divine right. The new Department of War pursues aggressive, unilateral foreign policy. America sells advanced weapons to any regime aligned against its rivals, fueling global instability. The military is configured for rapid, punitive strikes, not nation-building. Any defiance is met with swift, brutal response. Internally, surveillance and military tactics used abroad are now turned on American citizens. The war on terror has come home. Dissent is the new target. The state sees its own people as threats to be managed and suppressed. Civil liberties erode in a permanent emergency. The Department of War, built for foreign power, now crushes freedom at home. Citizens become subjects of their own empire. For more than a century and a half, the United States operated under a stark and unambiguous title: the Department of War. From 1789 to 1947, this name left no doubt about the nation's priorities and its willingness to use force to achieve its aims. The name itself was a reflection of the times, a direct acknowledgement that war was not just a possibility, but a central function of government. War was a grim, ever-present reality, and the language used by the government did nothing to soften or obscure that fact. But in 1947, everything changed. The National Security Act created the Department of Defense, a name that suggested a shift in philosophy and purpose. This new title signaled a supposed new era, one of restraint, caution, and a focus on protecting rather than conquering. The military was now positioned as just one part of a broader national strategy, working alongside diplomacy, alliances, and economic aid to build a more stable world order. The United States sought to project an image of benevolence and partnership. The name defense was aspirational, a hopeful label that implied the nation's military power would only be used to protect, never to provoke. Yet, behind this new language, the reality was more complex. The U.S. military presence expanded globally, and the reach of American power grew. Even as the United States fought major wars in Korea and Vietnam, the official rhetoric always framed these actions as defensive, never aggressive. The language of defense became a shield, masking the true nature of American intervention and ambition. But by 2025, after decades of conflict and controversy, the term defense had lost its credibility. The return to the Department of War marks the end of that ideal. The mask has fallen away. Today, leaders openly embrace war as a primary tool of statecraft, no longer hiding behind euphemisms or diplomatic language. The name change is an admission. The American empire no longer hides its nature. Defensive posturing is over. Open aggression has begun. The pretense is gone, and the world is watching now. The nation's true face is revealed, unvarnished, unapologetic, and unmistakably clear. The path America is on is well-trodden and leads to ruin. The embrace of empire and suppression of dissent are classic symptoms of a republic in decline. History warns. Empires that seek total dominance abroad lose freedoms at home. Endless conflict and military expansion hollow out democracy. The new doctrine invites rivals to escalate, fueling arms races and instability. The pursuit of absolute security creates absolute insecurity. Civil liberties are the first casualties. Obedience replaces debate. The Department of War will fight abroad and at home, erasing the line between citizen and enemy. The choice to abandon diplomacy for force leads to perpetual war and moral bankruptcy. History has warned us, but America has chosen not to listen.